All right, well, welcome everybody to our first virtual online summit. It's really good to see everybody since most of us haven't seen each other on out in the field this year. I'm going to start with a bit of a opening presentation, talk a little about the summit and the officials program. Rob DeMartini will be joining us shortly. And he's going to give a broader overview of sort of a state of the union of USA Cycling. And we feel like as stakeholders in the sport and what you all do, it's important for you to get not only where we are with the officials program, but to have an overall view of the organization and the sport. So that's what we're going to run through to start this morning. First thing is just to give you all a welcome. As I was working on the agenda and the run of show for this, we hadn't really come up with a theme, but one started to emerge a little. And I'm thinking is challenges and opportunities. And I think this summit virtually is a great example. I mean, it's a challenge. We can't all be together as we've traditionally done these in the past. We can't all be in the office in Colorado Springs and be able to see each other, but it also creates great opportunity that we have over 200 people registered for this. You're able to sit on your couch or your kitchen table or wherever and participate. You can sort of come and go. And I think that's where we are in general with the program and where we are with the sport is we've got obviously serious challenges as a sport, as society in general. But I think we're trying to look ahead at the opportunity involved in there and take advantage of those. And I think that's going to be a theme through the week. You'll hear me talk about it a little today. You'll hear Rob talk about it. And as we looked at the presenters, you know, we're going to hear some good things and some hard things to hear. And we have challenges ahead of us. But I think the theme in each of those is we've got great opportunity to do better ourselves as a sport personally. And there's some things that the last year has taught us that we can grow better from. So I'd ask you to keep that in mind as we run through this. And with that, we'll get going. So just a few things with the summit for an overview. First, thanks for attending. Like I said, it's great that we can have people not have to travel and spend the money to go to Colorado, even though we can't see each other. I think you're going to learn a little bit during this. We'll have some interactive sessions. And most importantly, we've got a couple sessions for thanking some great officials during the weekend. We are recording this, so you can go back and see what you missed. We'll chop it up as best we can by session. It'll probably take us about a week to get it up, and we'll get this all posted. And feel free to share that with the community. We want people to be a part of this. I do want to thank the Technical Commission for their help on doing this, and I'll talk a little about our staffing. It's been a pretty challenging time, and that group stepped up not only with this, but in general helping with the program. Particularly, I think they're all on here. Bonnie Walker, Andy McCord, Noreen Landis Tyson have really stepped up and helped out quite a bit with getting this going, and you'll see them presenting a little later. Just a little bit on housekeeping. Please keep your devices on mute. We're all hopefully Zoom or other webinar pros by now, but just keep that in mind. Feel free to use the chat button to ask questions. At a few times we will open it up. We do have this set to allow you to unmute yourselves, but feel free to send the chat questions to either everyone or myself or Justin. We're both going to be helping out each other and trying to queue those questions up for our panelists and presenters when we get to those areas. We will have someone moderating for the speakers, and what we'll do is take any questions you have and relay those to them over the audio so people can hear them. I mentioned earlier, but we did enable direct messaging, so feel free to reach out to your friends on that chat functionality. And as I said earlier, don't get that confused with the everyone function and say something embarrassing. We're going to take some breaks, both between sessions, and we've got a 30-minute break built in. I did one of these a couple weeks ago that I was attending. It was 4 hours straight and it was painful. So we tried to build that in. We're just going to leave the meeting open. So what I'd recommend is you can log out and log back in, or just turn your camera off and mute your computer. But our goal is to just leave this open. And come and go as you need to. No one's keeping roll. There's no creaky door to leave our conference room like there is in the office. So you can come and go as needed. And lastly, we really hope you know where the restroom is. So feel free to get up and move about as you need to. And we don't get to see each other out in the field, so take this opportunity to say hi to people you know. Also, I just ask that you ask questions, and we've got a Q&A tomorrow afternoon with myself, Rob, Stuart Lamp, Tara McCarthy, Justin. We're gonna have a lot of USAC staff on. And if you think of any questions today or tomorrow, you can email those to officials@usacycling.org. That'll help us just get a good question list together so that we're not bogged down in chat tomorrow. So I want to run through events. Some of this will be familiar to a few of you who've seen this. You're obviously officials and are very invested in how we're looking for events and what last year and next year looks like. We've got some pretty neat new programs going, and I'm going to talk a little about those. So a little bit of recap on 2020. We instituted some new programs over the course of 2019, both from the sort of sales and perspective, but also trying to make life a little easier on our organizers. So up until March 1 last year, and I think this will be important when we look at some charts later, for the first time since at least I've been at USA Cycling, we were up in both road and mountain bike races. We were both up in races as well as participation days. And I think everybody realizes we've had a downward trend for years. Up until March 1, and that is a relatively short time frame, but we were actually trending the right direction again. And that came through a lot of hard work and some programs. And everybody knows what happened around March 1st, 2020. Things started to really shut down, and I'll talk about those impacts. So we have some strategies on the mountain bike side. I think you all have seen it. We really worked closely with organizers to bring them on board and into USA Cycling. We ran some specials on licenses at those events and offered some permit incentives. We worked hard on bringing events in to the organization. We worked hard on relieving some burdens and make things smoother. As an example, we instituted a new permitting system, which is much easier and cleaner and provides better information on the events. And we worked outside of our normal model. And you're going to hear that a lot, especially from Rob, that, you know, for years we were an organization that existed and people were with us because they had to be. And I think you all know that's not the case anymore. There's lots of events outside of our realm that are plenty successful and say they don't need us. So that's really caused us to rethink things. Pre-COVID, we had implemented these actions and we were really stabilizing where we sat. I think we'd sort of found the bottom, and it's something we can still build on despite COVID. So there should be a 2020 recap. We definitely saw a decrease in event. Where we ended up at the end of the year, 75% decrease in sanctioned events. From, you know, sometime in March until June 1, we actually stopped permitting during the early stages of COVID. And even if we had had permitting, no one was going to be able to get permits from the local health authorities anyway. During that time, we spent a lot of effort and time building up guidelines and working with our organizers to talk about what safe events look like. But between that and the end of the year with the decrease in events, 75% decrease. We were also, our participant days were sat at about 20% of what they did in 2019. So 80% down over 2019. And Rob will talk a little about financials, but that had a huge impact on us. Just to let you know how this works, and we spent over $2 million on insurance in December of 2019 for the 2020 season. And what happens is that organizers do their events. You all seen the rider surcharges that come back to us. Essentially, we pay for that insurance through those rider surcharges throughout the year. And we knew we were going to be down a little, but we were down a lot. 80% of that money didn't come in to pay for an insurance package we'd already spent the money on. So definitely a hurt there. And Rob will go into some financials on his portion. I think you all saw, and we had some webinars where we talked about racing, but events definitely aren't and haven't been run as they have in the past. Small groups, socially distanced, People were doing events, as you can see. I mean, we ran quite a few events at the end of the year, but they were doing them differently. On the competitive side, we saw more time trials. Mountain bike tended to do better than Mass Start road events. I saw a big move to virtual and challenge events, which I'll talk about. And again, this is something that there were challenges, but people did see some opportunity. People want to get out on their bikes. There's no doubt about it. The events that have been able to happen and been able to do so safely with smaller fields have sold out. So people want to get out there. Events are modifying how they operate. Virtual and challenge events and a ton of modification to make things safer. Just like we're seeing in society in general. You go to a restaurant now, you sit outside in a little bubble on the sidewalk, or you're distanced away from other people. Everybody's wearing masks, and it's just something we've seen all around. And again, COVID had a huge impact on us. We'll talk about it a little more, but we see some new opportunity in this. A couple of those opportunities are virtual events. I keep joking that we're going to work with one of our partners, Road Grand Tours, RGT, and I'm waiting for a little avatar of a red car with an official in a blue shirt sticking out the top of it. I think we're going to try to build that into the next agreement. But we were able to bring on 4 new virtual partners with USA Cycling and offer discounts to our members to keep them engaged. And you as officials, by the way, can take advantage of those if you're interested. A bunch of different virtual event types. We ran a Race League on Zwift. We actually moved the PRT virtually, working with those organizers to the RGT platform. So we have some cool stuff going on there. And really for us, it was keeping members in the community engaged in us and in the sport. What I call challenge events have been super popular. And I think this is something we'll continue to see. People who weren't able to hold their events in person. For instance, we worked with the Pan Mass Challenge, and this is a huge event in Massachusetts as a fundraiser for the hospital, one of the hospitals there. They were able to raise tens of millions of dollars through their challenge event as opposed to their in real life event, which obviously helped fund some pretty critical stuff, and we worked real closely with them. We actually sanctioned 74 virtual events. I wrote this slide in December. We were actually up a little past that. That is something we'd never done before. And this is something that will continue past the end of COVID. And we see those events continuing, even on the competitive side. I mean, you as an official, maybe they're working an in real life bike race, and there are people at home on a virtual race going on at the same time for these events. So we see that really continuing, and we've given our organizers support in that front on both the protection, insurance, and sanctioning side, showing results, things like that. So they have seen quite a bit of value. Everybody wants to know about 2021, so I'll talk about that a little and what we expect to see. First, I think it's no surprise that the start of the year is going to be really soft. The way we built our budget is that really through May, we expect to see a continuation of what we saw in fall and winter of 2020, which is just a few events that are happening, generally smaller fields, socially distanced. Obviously, everybody's waiting on a vaccine and some type of return to normal. And that's what we are looking at as well. I'll talk about it in a little bit. We're implementing a new business opportunity. The goal of that is to help events come back. So we're providing some subsidies and member benefits with events. And I think we all agree that the stronger events are, the better off we all are. So we've got some things working toward that. We've also stabilized that insurance offering, and we've moved from a big, huge bill we pay to doing something that is more on a per event basis. It doesn't have quite the upside, but as you'll hear from Rob, our finances are stable but challenged, and this is something that we can limit that downside. So a lot of things just to protect us, the organizers, and the organization there. Just a little about what we're seeing for the big races, the national championships and national calendars. We think that from June onward, with a little hard work, we're going to have feasible national championships. It has been really tough, and I think you all have seen it on the assignment side, to deal with calendar changes and changes of venues and everything else. But we're moving forward with that. We're working on some mitigation details for both that and our general sport. We're going to have ready in a couple of weeks and talk to with our event organizers on a different summit. We're looking ahead to secure all those venues further out. Our goal is to have, and we were progressing well this way, is have our national cities decided a couple of years out to avoid a rush. Now, unfortunately, we lost some venues due to COVID, which caused us to rush around. But we secured great partners with those, and we'll be announcing a couple of the last nationals shortly, including Masters Road and Marathon Mountain Bike. Contracts are being signed, so we'll have those out shortly. The national calendars are also really stable. We just announced the Gravity calendar, I believe yesterday. The Pro CX, the cyclocross calendar for the fall, will be coming out Monday with the UCI release. The Pro Road Tour, we've only lost one event, and that was the Colorado race due to COVID. And we worked really closely with those organizers. Basically, everyone who was earlier than May, we have looked to shift to the fall. So, for instance, those who go on the Gila crew, that event's going to be late September, early October. And we've worked with them to arrange that alternate calendar, knowing that those events probably couldn't happen in the spring. And that's been really successful. We've also worked to improve those. The new Pro CX calendar you see come out Monday is going to be a simpler, cleaner, much more focused calendar, which we did on purpose, and with some great events tied into it. So keep your eyes out for that. But Tara McCarthy and her team, Tara will be on tomorrow, worked really hard on both the national championships and the calendars. And as you'll hear later, when I say team, it's basically been Tara working over the last few months. So kudos to her. Just a couple new initiatives. We have a deal with NICA, and you all saw that nationally, that NICA will be we'll be sponsoring them. Not only NICA, but several of the leagues. You may have seen the news that the Colorado and Georgia leagues separated from NICA last week. We've actually got an agreement with them, and essentially every NICA-related interscholastic league we are sponsoring and working closely with to help bring those kids into the pipeline, including our collegiate program. Working on some broadcast deals. We want to showcase the sport even better, and hopefully more news coming on that in the next few weeks. And with teams, we actually saw an increase in our continental teams this year. We added net one, and we're stable with our domestic elite teams. And Justin, if you get a chance, if you want to drop the link in to those teams, you all can take a look at. We've got a web page this year built out for them, along with all of their rosters and communications. It's something we've told them we do. So Justin will drop that in chat. I want to talk a little about the race incentives, because you all hear about this, and we may ping you as an official to give us some feedback on this. We have this going for both the race and what we call rods. So when we define races, it's what you all work. It's anything that requires a USA Cycling license or membership. We also have rods, which is Grand Fondo's gravel. It's those events that don't require a license. That's sort of how we've started to define it. So what we've decided to help bring these events back is to provide event support to them, and that's some fee assistance, subsidizing the insurance, and doing some marketing for those. We believe this has to be mutually beneficial. And what we're asking back from the events is to do good things for the sport, is how I'll boil it down. Some examples are prize money equality between men and women, creating a novice race experience, which I'll detail out a little more, doing some dedicated women's and juniors races, and doing things like new rider clinics. And we've got a menu of these items up. It'll be integrated in our permitting system shortly. And if you do 4 of 8 of these, as an example, then we will provide you a subsidy on your insurance surcharges at the end of the day. We had to do a slight increase in our insurance just due to insurance costs. And this has enabled us to actually, if they do these things, take that price down below what they paid last year. So, and in the meantime, we get, I think, very quality things for our racing community. Just a couple things, the novice race experience, we'll be holding a webinar in a few weeks to detail that more with our officials. I'll just give you the classic example of you have a novice criterium, and you know what used to be Cat 5, and you start that, and a rider gets dropped on the second lap and gets pulled on the fourth lap of a 20-lap race. You know, that is not a great experience for them. So as officials, we want and hope you buy into the fact that novices and many times need to be treated a little differently, both how we apply the rules, how we interact. There's yelling at a new rider for the first time at a race for having his number upside down or her number upside down, and there's going and helping that rider get their number pinned on correctly. So it's just tied into some things we want the organizer to do as well, and we'll be detailing that more. We're doing an ask from the organizer as well to help that rider do their first race and be successful at it. And that's just one example. Our results, we hope, it's good for everybody to have more people at bike races, and we're going to work with the organizers to do that. Lower the barriers to entry, make it friendlier, draw new people in, and have more youth participating. And we think those are good things from the sport, and we think organizers should be rewarded for those. Where the officials are going to come in are some of the things I just talked about. And we're going to take a little bit of a light hand at this. I don't expect a 10-page report from officials about the women's only or juniors only, but we may be checking in with some of you just to make sure everything went okay and make sure that the organizers met their obligations to this as well. But I want to keep this an honest thing on the side of the organizers and not put a lot of paperwork on officials, but we also want to make sure it works well. So we're going to be asking for some feedback from some of you during the year on that. I want to go into a little organizational updates. So obviously 2020 was really difficult as an organization overall. We lost over 40% of our staff between furloughs and layoffs during the year. My department, which is operations, went from 16 members to 5 staff members during the summer and fall. At one point of those 5, 2 of those were out on sick leave for over a week. It got really lonely on some of our Zoom calls. So, aside from that, we had a new and different workload. We weren't running as many races, but we had to spend a huge amount of time working on making those races and rides safer and better. We spent a lot of time, as you all have seen, on developing COVID guidelines. And I feel like between me and the rest of the staff, every event organizer called us at some point during the summer and sometimes just wanted to talk. These folks are heavily invested in the sport as you are. And it was a tough time for everybody. So it's definitely a tough summer and fall. Already looking better for this year. Justin's back, Justin plus a half, I guess, with the newborn. And he's on board and is focused on officials. He started back 2 weeks ago and is fully back on board. And barring the organization closing down, I hope to keep him working. We've also brought back some additional ops staff, and they're focused on the sales and service for events portion. And a really important thing, we've managed to retain talent knowledge, and kudos to the staff. They stepped up tremendously during this time. We had a lot of staff working till 8, 9, 10 at night, and all of us at some point have worked over the weekend, and we managed to keep the ship going through the ocean during this time. So we managed to keep some pretty smart people around and bring them back from furlough. So that's been good to see. I want to go into a little bit of officials program update. I've shown this slide before. The orange is basically the number of races that we permit a given year, not total events, but races. and the blue line is the number of race officials that we've had. And you notice since 2010, on both, we've had a downward trend. That orange is finally bottoming out, and our goal is to grow that back. And we've hovered somewhere the last few years around 1,000 officials. Justin pulled the number of 2021 licensed officials. There are more people signed up for the webinar than we have licensed officials right now. And that's fine. There are reasons for that, both based on COVID, but also on our side. And I'll be honest and talk about that a little later. But just wanted to show you what the trend line is here. They do mirror each other, but our goal is to bottom that orange out and have it start to grow, and keep the blue doing the same thing as far as what the orange line does over the next few years. So I just want to give a review of 2020. One thing Rob actually asked us to push pretty hard on is create 3 task force groups, which we did this summer. And the NTC took charge of those and met. And I just want to give you a little feedback on how that worked out. We had a culture and community group. We had reimagining assignments and a training development and recruitment. And some things we were able to do despite the challenges is we took care of all the 2021 assignments. Those are all published and have been distributed. Mountain bike, I think we're going to publish this week, but is going out to folks. And that's mainly due to the real challenge we've had with that calendar and organizers moving dates around. So that's going to be headed out shortly. We're going to have to start on cyclocross soon. So that's all happening. We revised and implemented the Official of the Year program. Thanks to those of you who helped out with that. And that'll be presented tomorrow with our Officials of the Year. We're able to host, and again, this goes back to challenges and opportunities. For the first time, we were able to run some virtual training. So we did a Road B, Track Secretary, and Motor C virtual class. The Motor C is, I think, a great example. It's really hard to get enough people together to host one of those in a particular area and bring an instructor in. But we ran this online and went really well. We were able to knock it out. We did a couple of sessions over a couple of days. Went really well, and it's, I think, the future of how we're going to do this. We can get a good class of 12 to 20 people together and do it online with very little expense. So again, good opportunity there. We've got more of this planned, and I'll talk a little more about education and what we're working on there. Justin started to work on a new CAT-C online class. We've got a new learning management system, and yeah, it's something that we still value you all on the local level teaching those. I think nothing replaces that. But if someone misses that class in the spring, we don't want them to have to wait a year. So that'll all be tied in with Safe Sport and background check and be a real seamless system once we get going. A couple chat things. Deb said thanks to Valicia. Valicia got a really nice Christmas present from me, Deb, because she deserved it, just so you know. And Noreen said the track secretary class is better attended than ever before, which is true. And we showcased who all passed that. We also had periodic webinars and updates. Integrating Zoom and this platform, I think, has really helped us, and the ability to record it and for you all to ask questions and then watch it later. We also ran those for a ton of other people, both USA Cycling members and not. And our COVID stuff, I think, was really well accepted and very important for the community. And we had this summit. So thanks for jumping on, and we have a lot more to do. Few programs for this year, education. So some goals we've got is continue an online C-class. Justin's working on a rethink of our mountain bike A program. I've already got someone picked out to head a task force for what we're going to do with the Motor A. And we're also going to build out a collegiate module for those of you who may want to work that. And you'll hear a little about that collegiate portion, I think, tomorrow we've got. We're dedicated to do a Road A class this year, and we're just waiting to finalize some date stuff, and I'll announce that. We're talking about a Road Elite National Commissary course pending pandemic. And that's something we may do in conjunction with Cycling Canada. and that would include probably a cyclocross national commissaire. Continue with the online road B and the online motor C. And there are a couple other things that I don't want to promise yet, but we're working on through that. And we've got these budgeted and committed to running these. So more stuff will be coming out now that I've got some bandwidth and some staff back on board, and we'll start moving forward. Some other things I want to do is just keep holding these webinars and updates every 6 to 8 weeks or sooner. The task force was really important, and as good as the NTC is, we really need to involve you as a community to help us. This is your program, and the more we can get new officials involved in planning and development, I think that's a really good thing. Building better resources for you all to use out in the field, and just continue recognition of how important our officials are is something that we've committed to. So, and I accidentally left the top part in. Sorry. We have moved to a 365-day officials membership. I got a couple questions about the guarantee you all may have seen that we gave racers. If they don't race, they get to continue the license. That didn't extend to officials, but what I'll tell you all, and despite us needing the memberships, is that's now a 365-day license. So you can get it when you're going to start working, and it will carry for a year from there. Only exception being international commissaires, who all expire 12/31, and that's the UCI's fault, not mine. So that's just something we've done to try to add a little more value to your membership. Some external challenges coming up. We're going to have to deal with COVID. We know that. This isn't something that's even going to go away in 21. It's going to be something that's with us for a long time. We're going to have to be aware of that. We saw, as I mentioned, stabilization of racing. Putting on races is hard. Event organizers face increased cost and a lot of challenges with putting on events. So, sometimes they look and say, I can put on this race and be field limited and have all these expenses and all these officials and everything else. Why don't I just go do a gravel event? It's going to be easier. So just keep that in mind. And that's one reason I wanted to have this session we're going to have after Rob, with sort of impressions from the community of officials. And we need new officials in the system, and we need young officials and folks coming up, and we're going to work hard to make our system more accessible. Some internal challenges. IT is a mess right now. One reason we have 206 currently licensed officials is, for a long time, you couldn't buy your license, and it's still a real challenge. And I am very painfully aware of that. I spoke with our IT director yesterday, and he gave us the talking points about how the system's going to be fixed, and they're working on it. And I said, well, basically I can copy and paste exactly what I used in 2016 in the same presentation, which is we're going to fix the IT system. So we're painfully aware of that. And we had a pretty in-depth meeting with IT actually yesterday, and think we're going to get finally some progress. Rob, and I think you'll hear it, is committed to making your ability to get a membership with us as seamless as possible, not only officials, but also, and importantly, our general membership. It should not be and cannot be a difficult thing to do. And it's been really hard for us to manage internally, so the frank thing is resources will not allow us to do some things we want to do and some things we need to do. The ability to have a new online assignment tool is going to have to wait. It's something that we desperately need, but I'm having to, and everyone's having to do a little bit of triage and to decide what is most critical with the bandwidth we've got. So don't think we're ignoring you. If you ask for something we don't do it, sometimes we just can't. And we're having staffing bandwidth issues. We're still down quite a bit in staff, and that's going to be a challenge for 2021. So there's a couple of questions in chat, Justin, if you want to grab them. And I think, sorry, just took care of some feedback issues. I'm getting good at multitasking on Zoom. Just the final stuff I want to tell you all is this community has really supported itself, both race directors and officials, teams. It's been challenging. People have sniped at each other a little bit in general. People have been super understanding of COVID, and people have been supportive of us and each other, and that's really appreciated. We've had a ton of people step up and help. I mentioned a bunch of them, but there's other people, we can't go through everybody. And I think finally to you all, I mean, it's been a hugely difficult year, and everyone's invested a lot of time, money, and equity in becoming officials, and you have to be able to use that tool. You know, I'm an international commissaire. I didn't work last year, and it's hugely disappointing and difficult for all of us. But in the end, I think we'll come out better for these challenges. It's going to make us tougher. I am done a little late, which I was planning on, and I'll open it up. It doesn't look like there's any questions right now in chat that we need to cover. That oh, I hear Justin's assistant crying. So.
Just had one in chat that came along to me from Lynn Heidenreich about track B, if we were planning on having a course.
Yeah, that we're running that through the module. That's something definitely we can look at, and look at doing a online, possibly just as we did with the Road B. That's a great comment, and Justin, let's get it written down, and we'll take it to the technical commission and see what we can do with that.
Yep, got the note.
Awesome. All right, well, with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen, and Rob, or you can unpin me, Justin, and I assume we've got Rob. Wow, I can actually see everybody now, and it's awesome. So we're going to hand this over to Rob DeMartini, our CEO, and let's go ahead and spotlight him if you don't mind. There we go. And Rob, feel free to share your screen and take over.
Okay, I will. And just first of all, thank you all for giving us some time this weekend. As Chuck said, quite frankly, we don't get through the last year without the work of the dedicated staff he covered and the commitment from this organization to hold it together and get us through a year where we didn't race and you guys didn't get to officiate the way you wanted. So I'll start with a thank you. Let me share my screen. I've got just a few slides to cover, but I wanted to share with you. This is basically the same content I've used both with the board of directors and with our staff. So it's a little shorter just to keep you from being buried in it, but I did want to share with you the same discussion we're having with our people. And the first, some of this summarizes what Chuck's already said. We have navigated the pandemic. You'll see in a minute, I'm going to show you our budget. It was a real challenge, and without the dedicated work of our volunteer community, of our part-time staff and our full-time staff, we wouldn't have done it, but we have gotten through it. We said back last April, we wanted to live to fight another day, and we are going to do that. I hope you've seen we are finding ways to increase our relevance with the event and race director community. We see them as major critical customers that need to be supported, and Chuck has talked about, and you'll see more detail of how we're going to do everything we can on an ongoing basis to help our race directors put on better events that are easier for people to come to, easier to participate in, and easier to leave happy with their experience. And then finally, the stop in racing and some of our traditional daily duties allowed us to step back and really question what business we're in. You know, we've been selling a compliance-based product for an activity that was fairly steady, and all of a sudden we lost those all together. We've come up with a new business positioning statement called We Champion Cycling. And it continues to serve racers the way we have, and hopefully, you know, modestly improving that, but looks at being much more relevant to the entire cycling community. And later in this, I'll give you some examples of how we're going to try to bring We Champion Cycling to life. But that position did come out of the slowdown last year and our ability to step back and ask some really hard questions. Chuck covered this. I don't think we normally share this, but I'm trying to be as transparent as I can be. Moving my dialog boxes so I can see what you see. On the left of the chart is where we ended the year. On the far right, the numbers we had for prior year. So our revenue in 2019 was just under $16 million. It fell to 11, or about a 35 to 40% decrease. What the hard work of the staff, the hard work of the choices that we made, we not only got through it, but we cut expenses by more than we lost on revenue and ended up basically at break even. We had planned to lose about $1 million in 2020 behind some growth initiatives. We recalibrated and said those didn't make sense given the condition of the market. And most of you who have managed budgets before, in falling revenue, it is very hard to catch it with expenses. But the team did a good job, tough choices. But we did break even in 2020, which allows us to keep that investment powder dry for the coming year. So really hard work by everybody in the system to produce good financial results in what was otherwise a pretty disappointing strategic year. Okay. So I talked about We Champion, and what that is about is trying to recognize that the governing body can play a much bigger role than just, and I put that in quotes, managing the racing side of the category. That we owe it to the ecosystem, get more people in, get them riding mass start events, and then giving them paths to matriculate up to racing if that's what they want to do. So we've built all of our programs or all of our strategic work around 3 different areas: participation, programs, and performance. And programs are the things are really focused at youth. You saw us make youth membership free this year, and our intention is to keep it that way. If you're under 18, you can be a member of USA Cycling with no fees whatsoever. We're going to launch something called Let's Ride Camps. We've done a lot of work to get started in the DEI space. We're going to do everything we can to make this sport more approachable and more inclusive. At participation, Chuck has already mentioned, we're doing what we can to improve the financial performance of our event organizers' work and to improve the safety and experience, how much fun people have when they come to a bike race. And then performance, I'll talk about a little bit later, but that's obviously where we've been for a long time. We're not going to shift any effort away from how we perform at a world-class level. So let me tell you about those 3 programs quickly, but the first is Tokyo. One of the commitments that Jim Miller made was that we would use 2020 delay to take a stronger team to Tokyo in the summer of 2021. We believe we're in that position. Some of our top athletes are doing incredibly well. Chloe's her rehab work is going incredibly well. We are still very committed to win 7 medals in Tokyo this summer. If things fall our way, we can do better than that, but 7 medals will be 2 better than we did in Rio, and the best we've done, I think, since 1984. We also want to have the best athlete development in the world. And I'll talk more about the Olympic Development Academy, but we've set broad goals because as soon as Tokyo's over, we're going to be staring down the gun barrel at Paris in 3 years and Los Angeles in 7. We want to win a medal in every discipline. That's never been done. So if we can win across the different Olympic disciplines, we can demonstrate the capability, not just of our road programs, but of every other. And we want to be the best women's cycling nation. I think Title IX and the collegiate and high school girls and women's sports program puts USA in a good position. And we've seen that in our recent performance, and that's one of the goals we have for Tokyo. For those that have questioned, you've seen a lot in the news. It's our belief, and it's the USOP's belief, that Tokyo will happen. The question will be what fan participation is going to look like. It could be no fans whatsoever. It could be very limited. They have some very difficult quarantine rules that they're putting in place right now. But we believe that it will happen, short of COVID getting much worse, that Tokyo will come off. You may have seen some of this written about and spoken about on social media. Jim Miller and he has launched a new program called the Olympic Development Academy. It's designed to put more infrastructure below the national team to get upwards of 120 kids into high performance development at younger ages in their development. We'll launch our first semester this year. It is a participatory program where participants will pay for some or all of it, and we will subsidize it not only for the total program, but also for kids who cannot afford to get there. So we're going to do one semester this year, and then we'll go into a 2-semester flight next year, assuming anything's back to normal. This has been very well received by athletes, and we're sitting right now with, I believe, over 400 applications for this program. So exciting stuff, trying to broaden competitive cycling with the top young athletes in this country. I spoke about Let's Ride camps. This is kind of the other end of the spectrum. These will be free camps designed to get 20,000 kids through the program in the first year. And it really is twofold. I'm cognizant of the fact that we're trying to fix something that isn't really broken. Many moms and dads can teach their kids to ride bikes just fine, but they don't have any introduction to USA Cycling. So these will be, church parking lot 2 to 3 hour camps conducted by USA Cycling bike clubs, by USA Cycling coaches, and certainly USA Cycling officials if you want to. And it's a pretty light lift. It's not at all oriented towards racing. It's designed to get kids familiar with bike riding, familiar with the safety, and familiar with etiquette, and just to introduce that this is a sport. It's more than just the utensil you use to get to your sport. So we're very optimistic about where that will go in the future. And then Chuck also talked about, on top of this, we have reached an agreement with NICA, as well as the 2 leagues that have left NICA, and we'll be working with all young kind of mountain bike NICA and NICA-like programs on a going basis going forward. And that's something that has been elusive to us for some time. So 2021 and beyond, we still are in the middle of a pretty hard pivot in the role we play. We've sold a compliance product for a long time, and we need to think about not only doing that, but figuring out how to create affinity. We have very limited experience in selling a discretionary product, and so you see some of the growth pains we're going through right now. Historically, our mission, our message, and our benefit package has not resonated with the non-racing cyclist. And we continue to try to figure out how to make that benefit package much clearer to the weekend warrior, as well as just the person that goes out and rides by themselves. And then the last area is that the endemic cycling organizations have not necessarily seen us as contributing to the growth of the community. And so if you think about We Champion Cycling, it's very selective about the words there to say we champion more than just our own programs. We champion the programs of really good youth and grassroots organizations all across the country that are doing good for the sport. It's pretty easy for me to say that. We have to live up to it on an ongoing basis. I know the team's committed to do that. And you guys represent a lot of that. You are our face to many, many of the people who interact with us. And so, doing it kind of hands open, palms up, how can we help, is the culture we want to take on at USA Cycling. I lost my cursor here. So 2021, we're still in the midst of this. Our budget reflects real caution. You'll see, I think, in the event schedule what Chuck's team is progressing, but we see a pretty soft first half and then some pent-up demand after that. We're financially prepared for the year, and we have set internal goals that are much more aggressive than we budgeted. We've made the move to free youth. We're launching Let's Ride this month. The Olympic Development Academy will start in April, and we have the NICA agreement in place and will come to fruition this NICA season. And we're still fully focused on Tokyo. We need to win to keep the sport relevant and to keep little kids looking up and saying, Mom, can I do that when I grow up? And we want that answer to be absolutely you can. And here are the pathways for you to get there. It's one of the things the sport has always suffered from. So I'll leave these as open questions. I'm happy to talk to them now, but I'm also happy to have you think about them and come back to me or to this team. You know, what can we do to better support you? What can we do to bring events back better and faster? Those are the two questions as I think about this group. You guys have a lot of experience, way more than I do. But we can put plans in place if we can, you know, understand what you think puts you in a stronger position in your market and will help event directors get their events back better, faster, stronger, and more fun. And I just want to close by thanking you for your support, your commitment to this sport. It doesn't work without you. And it is one of the really differentiating things about USA Cycling and every other kind of cycling organization is we bring, you know, officials, we bring rules, we bring guidelines, and we bring a deep knowledge of how to put on a great event. And we could not do that without you. So thank you very much. And if there's any questions, let me look at the chat real quick.
Nothing so far, Rob. And if y'all have questions, feel free to put them in chat. And we've unspotlighted you in chat, Rob. So okay. I will give the opportunity for anyone to unmute themselves and ask a question if you'd like to. We're running pretty early now. Rob caught us up. That's usually my job. So,
you know, the one thing I would add, you might have seen in December, we restructured the board of directors at USA Cycling, went from 22 members to 11, brought in more outside perspective to try to reach a broader market, maintained or slightly elevated our athlete voice, and maintained our foundation voice. So we've had one board meeting in the new structure in January. I will tell you it's the most effective one I've seen since I've been here because it's down to a manageable number of people and a broader perspective of constituencies. So that took place at the very beginning of the year.
So Christopher's got a question. By far the biggest expense for our road race are cost of officials. Since we run so many fields, is there any thought of subsidizing officials' cost if the race meets the goals? We've not, Christopher, and part of the reason is, you know, the money has to come from somewhere. What I think what a pie in the sky goal would be is to pay for at least the chief officials, possibly. We do that with at least one of our calendars, the Pro Road Tour. We take a substantial fee from them that goes for a variety of things, marketing, etc. In the end, when we look at everything we spend back, we subsidize that, but we do pay for the officials, the chief officials, travel as well as fees while they're there. And we have, on a limited basis, been able to work a little bit of magic and use things like interns or trainees at different events where we go in and help out the organizer, especially some of these races with big fields. And it's also a benefit to those officials who've been able to do that. So yeah, it's something right now we don't have the resource for that to be a monetary shift. But to Rob's point, if we can bring in the enthusiasts and really grow that side of the sport, it does bring in revenue to help with the race side, because as he's pointed out, and I think we know, the race side is having difficulty supporting itself. So that was a bit of a long answer, but I hope that answers it somewhat. Rob, another comment on your New Balance shirt. It's the second one I've gotten. The other one came privately to me, so I won't say who it came from.
I think that concept, though, of subsidizing official expense for event organizers is dead on what we're trying to do. We're trying to transfer the costs of the services that USA Cycling provides to a broader riding public and to event participants, and try to get it off the back of the organizer. Because I mean, some of you have organizing experience. Nobody does this to get rich. They're doing it because they love the sport, and it's paper thin margins, and you know, even made even harder in an area where you're worried about how many people are going to show up. So
And Rob,
conceptually,
I'll add to that maybe. I mean, one thing that was a little disappointing, I think, for us this summer was, and using a broad brush here, but I think some of our organizers were a bit disappointed in how they were treated by their participants. I think you all know, you're behind the scenes and see this. There's a ton of expense that gets laid out up front, and then COVID hit, and boy, some participants got really upset, and there was actually a lawsuit in one case involving Ironman of people, asking for the fees back. We've worked really hard to try to, we put an article out early on just talking about the facts behind it. I think everyone thinks an organizer has a Maserati in the garage and vacations in Tahiti when they're not putting the race on, and that's absolutely not the case. So I think the more you all can do to educate, because I think everyone here knows what really goes into putting on events. Dan, you talked about the cost of officials at mountain bike races. Tom Spiegel is going to be on for our next session. You obviously know Tom. He's a longtime organizer and also a mountain bike official. And I think that's something he's going to speak to. We've tried to work pretty hard to, matter of fact, we got in trouble with the UCI a couple of times because we've tried to put the correct number of officials at an event, not what the rule book calls for. And we've gotten a little heat, but that has been one of the mountain bike initiatives I've talked about. We've really tried to cut costs for those folks. So thanks for that comment.
Quick question. Over the years, we've heard about we need to grow the members in our organization. What are we doing to retain them?
Vince, it's a great question. And I think one of the challenges, and I don't want to take you down this rat hole because we spend a lot of time on it, but we've been trying to push members. And the reality is to the current members we have, we sell a license. And no matter how we bundle it, today it's bundled with a $50 standard membership and a $50 race upgrade. I think we've been kidding ourselves about the way people see that. It is a $100 license to race. And so I think whether that's a good deal or a bad deal, I don't want to go into that right now, but I think we ought to be more transparent and more simple. And then recognize we're dealing with two almost completely distinct audiences. I do this with my group all the time. I draw 3 concentric circles. The center circle is people who race bikes. And by our definition of what race bikes means, that's only a community of about 150 to 200,000 people. And the way I get to that number is the combination of the people that enter our events and have our licenses, and then the pointy front of all the unsanctioned and gravel events that are out there. The next circle is people who are active cyclists. And that number we know from research is about 7 million. So it is a dramatically bigger community, 100 times bigger. And we've been thinking, how do we sell them memberships? I don't think we need to sell them a membership. We need to be a relevant organization, and we need to harvest some revenue from them, But I don't know, my cost of goods, if I can speak in that language, for that outer ring is $0. It's $5 if I send them a sticker and a hat. So we've been trying to sell them a $50 membership, when what I really want from them is $10 a month of financial support so we can run this sport. So we are really rethinking broadly the way we think about it. Your question, Vince, was about retention. And that's why we put the guarantee in place. We knew, under the heading of no good deed goes unpunished, we moved away from a calendar year license last year to a flowing, rotating one. And we knew this renewal season would be particularly difficult because people had renewed last year before COVID hit. So they'd spent their $80, whether they asked for a refund or not, is secondary. They'd already spent it, and it wasn't so much money that they had to get it back. So some people asked for refunds, but most people just put up with it as one of the costs of COVID. This year, with the rolling membership, we have 50% of our members right now sitting on the sidelines waiting to see if racing comes back. And I totally understand that from a human nature standpoint. The dilemma we have is that our costs, a good portion of our costs are fixed. And so if they don't come back or don't come back soon enough, we're going to end up with a cash flow problem. So we put this guarantee out. And the way the guarantee works, it basically says if you buy your license by the 28th of February, this month, and you don't race in 21, you don't enter a single event, we'll extend your license through it's either through June 1st or June 30th, I forget, halfway through next year. And the idea is a little bit like Vail's Epic Pass guarantee, to try to say, look, we can't control, just like you can't, whether your race is going to happen, but if it doesn't, we're going to try to give you some relief. That's moved the needle a little bit, but we got a lot of work left to do. There's people saying it should be for the whole year, and others that just aren't engaging yet. So we are working hard to try to retain and recruit back past members. So we have about 20,000 events that haven't renewed yet this year. We do think most of them are just waiting and seeing, if you will. And then we have probably a community of about 25,000 that have drifted out of the racing scene in 2018 and 19. And we're trying to recruit them back as well.
Yeah, Vince, I'll add on to this, and this, I think Rob ties in another question I got directly. And Rob doesn't even know this, Vince. He asked myself and three of the other chiefs to meet Friday and really do an assessment of where we sit. And I think we're going to propose to him next week, and he's hearing it while you guys are. But we're going to propose to him some changes. And Rob's pushed us for simplification and ease. And I think we've got some ideas on how to do that. As an example, I got a private message, just what's the value of a club? And why should my club affiliate with USA Cycling, and what's the value prop? This absolutely goes back to that compliance versus desire to be a part of USA Cycling. And, we actually have rules in the rule book saying you can't wear a sponsor on your jersey unless you're a club. I mean, that is you got to be this, you got to be compliant, or you're not going to be allowed to do this. We want to change that, but we have some real challenges. I mean, right now, unless you're the club president, if you want to do a new club, it is a PDF form. It was a paper form until 2 weeks ago. It is a fillable PDF form you have to send us, and we have to process. So those are definitely things that have been identified. I will tell you, for the person who sent it, the club thing has been brought up multiple times. And one of the proposals that we talked about yesterday was, and something Rob really believes in, is putting ownership over these. And the club program has drifted a little within our organization of who owns it. But someone is going to own that, and someone's going to be in charge of it, and someone's going to improve it. So a couple other questions, Rob. Matt was asking, you may want to expand on this. Offer to race directors. I'm not sure if that was the guarantee or what you were asking on that. So you might want to shoot us a note back. Robert, how's the guarantee work for family memberships? One person the license in 2021 uses the extension for all. I think Bucher's on, who's our chief marketing officer, and he'll answer that in chat. I'm going to defer and kick that to him since he owns that.
I would tell you our intention there is not to gimmick the guarantee. If somebody doesn't race, we'd extend. I will tell you the family membership has been a good concept that has been very hard to execute in our system, and we may actually retire it because it makes less sense today, given that we made the move to free youth. And it's not that we don't believe in the concept of a family membership. We just know that 4 licenses bundled together, tied to one, has created a lot of technology challenges for us that we should be able to handle. I will tell you, this isn't splitting atoms, but you've seen the way our IT capability is, so it's a handful.
Yeah, and Stuart Lamp, who a lot of you know, who works with me, he went to test the system, and he's a single parent, did himself and his 2 children, ended up paying more than if he'd registered everybody separately. That was certainly not the intent there. And certainly what happened is we did a good thing, which was to give free junior licenses away. And it absolutely immediately changed the value proposition of the family membership. And it's something we're probably going to recommend, as Rob said, to look at. Matt, we honestly really haven't thought about the race director guarantee. Is something to look at that I'll take to Stewart. As Rob said, I mean, our intention here is not to game the system. We want to support, I think, as you know, our event organizers. So feel free to reach out and I'll have a chat with Stewart. He couldn't be on today. He's actually out working a bike race today in Alabama. So he couldn't be on, but I'll definitely take that to him and we'll come up with some solutions there. And I got an email or message directly from Roberta saying they want to do a Let's Ride camp. So
Yep.
Thanks, and I'll make a note of that. Roberta, if you don't mind just emailing this at officials@usacycling.org, I'll pass that on to the right people. It'll help me instead of pulling it out of chat here. So
Mari Holden is running that program, and I think we have 4 test Let's Ride events this month, and then as COVID releases opens up a bit, our intention is to run those all over the country. And the idea would be it's a kit in a box that shows up and you can look at it for a couple of hours, and probably the most difficult local thing is going to be securing a parking lot or a safe place to do it. But I would think that the technical knowledge that exists in this community could easily put on these camps, either through your club or as an official or as a coach.
Ask about rod camp curriculum. You're talking to the people who aren't experts, but as Rob mentioned, this is it's a little bit of a kit in a box. It's the way we've talked to. This has been run through our athletics program and Mari Holden. Super low lift for this. This is, I think, Rob, you equate it to that first swim lesson that USA Swimming does. This should be really easy. So.
Yep, and there is curriculum in there.
And Booker just answered, I think, Robert, your question in chat. Anyone who doesn't race in 2021 will extend that. So, great. I mean, one thing I'll thank Rob for, which I've told my staff in our strategic internal ops document for our department, the number one thing is do right by the sport. And that's something that we've not always done. And I think hopefully you all are seeing a bit of a change. There are realities to all these situations, but that's the way we're approaching stuff now. And hopefully it's showing a bit. So good questions. Anything else coming out? Remember, we do have a Q&A tomorrow afternoon with more of the staff. I think Booker may be on it. I've got Stewart and Tara. Rob's going to be on it. I'm going to be on it. Justin. Please feel free to work up these questions. If you can send them to us ahead of time, it'll allow us to get going and keep me from fumbling or Rob fumbling answers. So that'll be certainly helpful as well. And feel free to unmute if you can't or won't type in chat real quickly. And then if we don't have anything else, we're going to go into a little bit of a break before our 10:30.
I received a couple of notes. They were back on the education piece, but just responded back that we'll just have them for conversation pieces with the NTC. But regarding track B, track A, secretary starter for track, as well as a Moto A and how it's going to change in the future.
Yeah, and I'll cover the Motor A. What we decided to do was put a task force together on that, and Duke Spinelli I've asked to head that up, and he's agreed. And we talked about that late last year. I've not gotten to finish putting that together, but with the new UCI, mandates on 2-up motors has changed a lot of things, and really how we are what the training's going to be focused on, what it's going to look like, and what the value proposition is. So I'm going to turn that over to him and some other experienced people, and let them take a look at it. As I mentioned, I mean, we know that all of the education opportunities need to be looked at, and the NTC's worked a bit to sort of scope it out. Again, please realize we just can't do everything this year, and a lot of what we've done has been Justin or volunteer efforts on behalf of the NTC. I mean, Sarah Rodney, who I think you all know, I don't know that she's on because it's getting late at night there, but we lost her to Europe and the Netherlands, and she's been really instrumental as an example. She really built that B online class that we're going to be using over. So it's been a lot of help by those folks, and we're going to continue to rely on that. Anything else, Justin, that we need to cover that came your way?
Nope, that is it.
All right. Well, if you have questions, send them to us and be ready. And we are going to go on a break until I'll plan on activating everything again at 10:25 Mountain Time. And we should have our presenters on. We'll do an intro and we'll roll into that next bit. So thanks so far, everybody. Rob, thanks for jumping on Saturday. And feel free to send us the stuff. So we're on a little bit of a break. I'd suggest you just turn your camera off and mute, or you can log out and log back in. And we'll see you again in about 10 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.